You earn $10 a month. On paper, you've made it. You're doing better than nearly 90% of the country. Your parents feel proud. Your friends assume you're financially sorted. And yet, every single month, just days before your salary hits, your bank balance is dangerously close to zero. No massive luxury purchases, no wild parties, no reckless decisions, just a quiet, creeping question that keeps getting louder. Where is all my money going? And here's the uncomfortable truth backed by multiple behavioral finance studies. Income alone does not determine financial security. In fact, as earnings rise, expenses tend to rise even faster due to something economists call lifestyle inflation. In rapidly growing urban economies like India's, where housing, transportation, and social expectations are escalating faster than salaries, a 1 rupee lakh income doesn't stretch the way people think it does. This isn't a story about overspending, it's a story about a system where even disciplined earners feel broke, trapped between rising costs, invisible spending, and psychological pressure to keep up. And once you see how this actually works, you'll realize the problem isn't your salary, it's the way money silently disappears around you. The idea that 1 rupee 0.000 a month equals financial comfort is one of the most widely believed and most misleading assumptions in today's economy. It sounds like a breakthrough number because, historically, it was. A decade ago, crossing that mark often meant stability, savings, maybe even early wealth building. But economies evolve faster than expectations, and today, that same number lives in a completely different reality. In major Indian cities, the cost of living has surged at a pace that quietly outstrips salary growth. Rent alone can consume 25 to 40% of income in urban hubs. Transportation costs have climbed with fuel prices, and everyday essentials have been steadily rising due to inflation. That people feel far more than they calculate. Yet psychologically, your brain is still anchored to the idea that 1 rupee lakh is a lot, creating a dangerous gap between perception and reality. Behavioral economists call this money illusion, where people evaluate their financial situation based on nominal income rather than actual purchasing power. And this illusion is powerful because it doesn't just affect how you think, it affects how you spend. The moment you start earning more, there's an invisible upgrade in expectations. A better apartment, more convenience, slightly better food, subscriptions that feel small individually but accumulate silently. None of these feel like bad decisions. In fact, they feel deserved, but taken together, they quietly redefine your baseline cost of living. So while your income has increased, your new normal has increased with it, often faster. And that's the trap. You're not living extravagantly, you're just living at a level that your salary can't comfortably sustain anymore. Now comes the part that makes people uncomfortable, not because it's shocking, but because it's familiar. When most people think about spending, they imagine big-ticket items, rent, EMIs, maybe a vacation. But the real reason $10,000 disappears isn't one dramatic expense, it's death by 1,000 small justified cuts. Start with rent. In cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, or even rapidly growing Tier 2 hubs, a decent apartment in a reasonable locality can easily take $500 to $1,000. Add utilities, electricity, Wi-Fi, maintenance, and you're already pushing past $400, without even living extravagantly. Then comes transportation. Fuel, cabs, or daily commute costs that quietly add another $100 to $500 groceries and food, another $100 to $500 pending on lifestyle. And then come the invisible expenses, the ones your brain doesn't register as serious spending. Subscriptions, OTT platforms, music apps, cloud storage, maybe a gym membership you barely use, food delivery, 300 rupees here, 500 rupees there. It feels harmless in the moment, but over a month, it stacks into thousands. Social spending, birthdays, outings, weddings, office lunches, small celebrations that feel necessary to stay connected. Then there are the modern lifestyle add-ons, online shopping, quick upgrades, gadgets on EMI, limited time deals that feel smart but still cost money. None of these categories individually look irresponsible. In fact, if you examine any one of them, you can justify it easily. But here's the critical insight backed by behavioral finance research. Humans dramatically underestimate cumulative spending when it's fragmented into small transactions. Your brain treats each expense as isolated, not as part of a system draining your income. So by the time the month ends, you're not looking at one bad decision, you're looking at 200 perfectly reasonable ones that together leave you wondering how a six-figure salary still feels insufficient. And that's when the frustration sets in, not because you're careless, but because the system of spending is designed in a way that hides the full picture from you. Even when you think you're earning enough to cover everything, debt quietly creeps in, and it's rarely dramatic. It doesn't arrive as a warning siren or a flashing red light. Instead, it starts as a seemingly harmless opportunity, a 0% EMI on a new gadget, a slightly higher credit card limit, a personal loan to cover an unexpected expense, or that small car upgrade you've been postponing. Each of these feels manageable in isolation, especially because you've convinced yourself you can handle it. But here's the reality most high earners don't see. These tiny, manageable debts compound silently and dictate your cash flow long before you even realize it. Behavioral studies show that humans are wired to underestimate future financial burdens, a phenomenon called hyperbolic discounting. We value immediate satisfaction far more than future pain. So while the EMI of 2,500 rupees a month seems small today, it locks a portion of your income for years, reducing flexibility, limiting savings, and quietly creating anxiety that masquerades as normal stress. Multiply this by multiple EMIs, credit cards, and personal loans, and suddenly, a 1 rupee lakh salary doesn't stretch nearly as far as you assumed. What's worse, debt payments create a feedback loop with lifestyle inflation. Because part of your salary is locked into obligations, the remaining balance often gets spent to maintain lifestyle, not to save. You end up working harder, earning more, and spending more, while the chains of small, invisible debt quietly tighten around your financial freedom. This isn't a story of irresponsibility. It's a story of systems and psychology aligning to keep people trapped in a cycle that feels normal but is quietly eroding their wealth. The numbers don't lie. Cities in India have transformed rapidly over the past decade, and so has the cost of simply existing within them. Consider Mumbai, Delhi, or Bangalore. For a single professional, monthly rent for a modest one-bedroom apartment in a decent area can easily be 25,000 rupees, 35,000 rupees. Utilities, including electricity, water, and internet, push that number higher. Then add commuting, fuel, parking, cab rides, or public transport, which can easily cost another 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees. Daily essentials, groceries, personal care, and household items, averaging 10,000 rupees per month, are increasingly priced due to inflation and supply chain shifts. And yet, this is just the baseline, the necessary spending, before social obligations creep in. Weddings, birthdays, festivals, and office events often require thousands of rupees, creating invisible but recurring drains on your wallet. Even minor conveniences, like online grocery deliveries, food apps, or premium coffee stops, compound without notice. Research from the National Statistical Office shows that urban consumers spend nearly 60 to 70% of their salaries on essential living and lifestyle maintenance alone. So when a 1 rupee lakh salary enters this reality, it starts to feel like a lot less than it should. It's not mismanagement, it's the arithmetic of modern urban life. And psychologically, humans are terrible at tracking cumulative micro-spending. That daily 200 rupees coffee may feel insignificant, but over a month, it amounts to 6,000 rupees, more than a week's worth of groceries for some households. When you combine rising living costs, invisible micro-spending, and social expectations, it becomes painfully clear the 1 rupee lakh salary illusion is not a personal failure, it's an unavoidable consequence of living in rapidly expanding urban economies. The salary feels high only until you map it against the full spectrum of daily, recurring, and often invisible costs. Here's the paradox that traps so many people. Earning a high salary doesn't automatically make saving easy. It often makes it psychologically harder. Behavioral economists have studied this extensively and found that humans are wired to prioritize immediate gratification over future security, a bias known as present bias. When your income increases, your brain doesn't automatically recalibrate to save. Instead, it recalibrates to spend. You feel justified, deserved even, in upgrading your apartment, ordering food, taking a few extra weekend trips, or subscribing to every new service promising convenience. And the more discretionary spending you have, the less mental bandwidth remains for long-term planning. Compound this with invisible micro-spending and EMIs, and saving becomes a distant afterthought rather than a habit. Studies from the Indian Institute of Management reveal that nearly 40% of urban high-income earners save less than 10% of their income, not because they can't, but because they underestimate how quickly small, regular expenditures accumulate. Ironically, the more you earn, the more these subtle drains expand, creating a treadmill effect. You work harder, earn more, spend more, but save the same, or even less. The stress is real too. When people feel the pressure of a six-figure salary not translating into security, it impacts mental health, sleep, and decision-making, further fueling the cycle of reactive spending. And this isn't a moral failing. It's a perfectly rational response to a modern economic system designed around convenience, accessibility, and social signaling, where every upgrade feels necessary and every micro-expense invisible until it's too late. In this environment, saving isn't just about discipline. It's about awareness, timing, and understanding the psychological traps quietly eating your income. Let's make this real. Meet Arav, a 29-year-old software engineer living in Bangalore. On paper, he's successful, earning 1 rupee 0.00000 a month, working for a top firm, driving a modest car, and renting a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. But in reality, Arav feels trapped. At the start of every month, he sits down with his bank app, expecting to see room to breathe. But the numbers are tight. Rent consumes 28,000 rupees, utilities, 5,000 rupees, groceries, 12,000 rupees, transportation, 7,000 rupees, and the invisible lifestyle costs, subscriptions, coffee runs, weekend meals, occasional shopping pile up another 15,000 rupees. Add EMIs for a car and a personal loan totaling 10,000 rupees left. Arav believes he's making smart choices, but psychologically, he's in the perfect trap of lifestyle inflation. Each upgrade feels justified, each convenience feels essential, and each social obligation feels unavoidable. By the time he thinks about saving, there's hardly anything left. He tries budgeting, tracking every rupee, and even cutting unnecessary spending, but the numbers keep creeping back. What changed everything for him was awareness. Realizing that his struggle wasn't unique, that the system of rising urban costs and psychological spending traps is real, and that the way people perceive wealth is often misleading. Arav didn't suddenly earn more or spend less. He simply started mapping his spending against his goals, separating needs from invisible wants, and questioning habits he never examined before. Slowly, he began to reclaim control, not by depriving himself, but by understanding where the money silently disappears and why it always felt like too little. Arav's story isn't extraordinary. It's the story of millions quietly navigating the six-figure income paradox, and it highlights the harsh truth. Awareness, not income alone, is the first step toward financial freedom. The moment most people begin to regain control over their finances doesn't come from earning more. It comes from seeing the system clearly. It's the realization that money isn't just about numbers in a bank account, but about patterns, behaviors, and invisible forces silently shaping your spending. Psychologists call this metacognition, the ability to observe your own thought processes. And in finance, it's a game changer. For someone earning 1 rupee, 0.00000 a month, the turning point often begins with awareness, tracking every rupee for a month, noticing the micro-spending, understanding lifestyle inflation, and confronting social pressures to keep up. Suddenly, what felt inevitable, the paycheck-to-paycheck struggle, becomes a map instead of a maze. People realize that the struggle isn't personal failure, it's the predictable outcome of human psychology interacting with modern economic pressures. And once this shift happens, choices gain clarity. Every rupee becomes a conscious decision, a deliberate investment in a goal, a lifestyle choice aligned with values, or a moment of indulgence that's truly worth it. This mental reframing transforms spending from unconscious erosion to purposeful allocation. The stress drops, the feeling of scarcity fades, and financial confidence begins to replace anxiety. And crucially, this shift proves that the problem was never the 1 rupee lax salary. It was the invisible system around it. Awareness is the spark that allows disciplined planning, strategic saving, and even modest lifestyle adjustments to compound into real, sustainable financial freedom. It's not dramatic, it's psychological, and it's powerful. Here's the truth about improving your financial situation on a 1 rupee 0.000 salary. Most advice you see online is either too generic or completely impractical. Cut your coffee, stop eating out, save 50%. Sure, sounds simple, but it ignores human psychology and urban realities. The real, actionable approach starts with visibility and small structural changes that compound over time. First, track every expense, even the tiny ones, subscriptions, snacks, deliveries, because this is where your money silently disappears. Second, anchor your spending to goals, not habits. Separate essential living costs from discretionary upgrades and assign each rupee a purpose. Third, automate savings. If you never see it, you're less likely to spend it. And over time, even small contributions grow. Fourth, manage debt strategically. Prioritize clearing high-interest EMIs first. Renegotiate where possible and avoid adding new obligations that don't align with your goals. Fifth, consciously fight lifestyle inflation. Before upgrading a phone, moving apartments, or subscribing to that must-have service, pause and ask, does this really improve my life or just my image? Sixth, leverage free or low-cost alternatives for convenience. Cooking at home, shared transportation, and digital tools to track spending all save silently. Finally, cultivate financial awareness as a habit, not a project. Review your finances weekly, reflect on patterns, and adjust before stress accumulates. These steps aren't glamorous, but they are scientifically proven to work because they target the core issue, human behavior. The moment you apply them consistently, you stop living paycheck to paycheck, even on the same 1 rupee lakh salary, and start feeling in control, a profound psychological shift that turns apparent scarcity into real stability. Now layer student debt on top of that. For many people who attended college, the monthly payment on student loans ranges somewhere between $350 and $500 per person, though the exact amount varies widely depending on the size of the loans and repayment plan. In households where both partners went to college, that can mean $700 to $900 every month, leaving the budget before anything else gets paid. Unlike childcare, which at least serves a current purpose, student loan payments often feel like a bill from the past. It's money being paid today for a decision made years earlier, usually under a widely repeated promise. Borrow for education now, and the increased earning potential will make it worthwhile later. For many graduates, the degree did lead to better jobs, but the financial payoff hasn't always matched the cost of the loans required to get there. And here's where the situation becomes even more complicated. Student debt doesn't just take money out of the monthly budget. It also affects something lenders watch very closely when deciding whether someone qualifies for a mortgage: the debt-to-income ratio. That ratio measures how much of a household's income is already committed to paying debt. When the number is too high, lenders become reluctant to approve a mortgage. So the loans that were supposed to enable better careers, and eventually home ownership, sometimes end up becoming the very thing that delays buying a home. In other words, the investment meant to build the future can end up standing in the way of it. When you combine the two costs, childcare and student loans, the monthly impact can easily land somewhere between $2,700 and $3,400 for a typical dual-income household with young children. That's comparable to a second mortgage. Except unlike a home loan, these payments rarely build any lasting asset. They simply reset every month.